a rich man's world. I have turned the soul of this beautiful land, but that beautiful.
I tried this last time and it wasn't.
Yeah, well, we're let the music play.
I think about killing myself on a day. Everyone loves but I feel like they hate me. I can't explain the way that I feel, so everyone feels like I hate them. I hate me, leaving myself out of this hell. My mama tell me I need to get help. She isn't here. She followed through. I guess it explains my mental health. I've been through hell. I used to fantasize about being like everyone else. But say it took my mom away. My other mom just fell. I haven't seen my sister since my dad's locked in a jail inside his own mind. I sit alone at night and cry in my studio, begging God, please just tell me why. The only one that really cares is my wife. Don't get me wrong, she's all I need, but even she has a family. Who am I supposed to talk to? When I got questions about being a father, nobody responds to. I'm tired of learning on my own. I just want my kids to grow up in a happy home. They're happier when daddy's home, but they would rather see me working 9 to 5. You can't afford the sacrifices. Give up all your dreams and drive, but tell your kids that they can fly. Wonder why we always fight and why I'm hiding all the time.
Doesn't give me many options.
About killing myself on a day. Everyone knows but I feel like they hate me. I can explain the way that I feel, so everyone feels like I hate them. I hate me, blame myself out of this hell. My mama tell me I need to get help, but she isn't here. She followed through. Guess it explains my mental health. I've been through hell. These voices telling me I'll never make it out of my cell. I used to walk the hallways and I talk to myself. Now I got people always trying to tell me they proud. I don't believe you. I've never seen you. I'll never please you. Never need you. So please believe you. I'm pleased to leave you. Here's a review. You're hard to see through. It's hard to see through. I'm beneath you. You let me be through. I need some peace to breathe. Cause everybody's counting on me. And sometimes I just can't sleep. Mama's got me on my knees. I never thought my life would come to this. I know that Jesus made me for a purpose, but I feel I might succumb to this pressure in my head. You're better off dead. I'm a mess with success if you got no one left to share it with.
So you gonna lay out the definition of mental health? No?
Aren't y'all asking me questions?
Huh?
Are y'all asking me questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to the We Us an Hour show. I'm your host, Michael Phelps from the We Us an Hour show. I'm your host from We Us an Hour's group. I always want y'all to remember that We Us an Hour group is an educational group, informational group. We talk about current issues within our community, and we talk about solutions on how to navigate through these, to fix some of the issues in our community. Hopefully that we all come together as a collective. As I said once before, I'm your host, Michael Phelps from the We Us an Hour group, and I'll allow the Queen and King to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Rose Jackson, also known as Rose Payne. I am here speaking as a mental health professional. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Raymond Carlisle.
Okay, you want to read the
Topic.
Mm-hmm.
Today's topic. What are insecurities? Can it be a form of mental health? And if so, what are the causes and effects of it? An explanation. While many of us believe that many folks and people don't make great choices in life due to their own achievements and values, I'd like to introduce mental health into the equation that might go beyond our beliefs and comprehension. Insecurity and mental health, it's important to remember that insecurity is a complex feeling that may not be accurately represented by a single image. Insecurity can manifest in different ways, and it often accompanied by negative thoughts, patterns, which can be due to mental health issues. Insecurity is a feeling of inadequacy or lack of confidence in one or more areas of life. It can also involve difficulty coping coping with uncertainty, failure, abandonment, or hardship. What are the effects of these things? Insecurity can negatively impact mental wellness and lead to anxious or depressive thoughts and behaviors. Causes. Insecurity can stem from various factors, including childhood experiences, traumas, discrimination, comparison to others, and social pressures.
Okay. Now, when you heard some of those things that we listed, what came to mind? What you Miss Payne? Because I know that Miss Jackson. I know that you are. I'm sorry.
But Rose is good too.
Miss Rose. I know that you are familiar with some of these attributes, some of these characteristics, some of these behaviors. Because a lot of times we misdiagnose and misdiagnose people, and sometimes we get upset with people thinking that we understand them because we look at our own life and think because we're doing it, we think others can. What is your take on that?
Well, I'll start off with just a definition of what mental health actually is.
Mm-hmm.
So your mental health is your emotional health, your psychological health, your social well-being, and how it affects how you think, act, and feel. That's what makes up your mental health. As it pertains to mental health and insecurities, insecurities can stem from lots of different things. There are a lot of factors that can make someone feel maybe insecure. But I'll just say maybe I feel like our main ones are maybe come from our caregivers, like the way that we were raised. Then from there, our insecurities manifest from some of the choices that we make. So if we make good choices, we feel more secure. If we make poor choices, we feel more insecure. Our insecurities also stem from the way that we have been made to feel from our peers. I always start with the caregivers just because the way that we are raised or brought up is a big factor in our self-esteem. So if we have our mother, father, grandparent, or any other caregiver, adult in our life saying that you are beautiful, you are smart, you are kind, they're pouring into us in a positive way, more than likely we usually grow up feeling more positive. However, that could be impacted with our experiences in our adulthood. If we grow up being told the opposite, you are ugly, you're stupid, you are not good enough, we grow up feeling insecure about different things, and we kind of just carry that on with us until we start maybe achieving things that make us feel better about ourselves. So I feel like our baseline for our self-esteem starts in the way our caregivers impact us.
Okay, so you said because you had used the word was very informal was choices.
Mm-hmm.
So within those choices, there are some that can make good choices, and there's some who can't make as sound choices. As I say, is that a mental health issue, or is that just a plain laziness issue?
I feel like it could be, I guess, instead of using the word lazy, maybe using the word maybe unmotivated. I think it could be a little bit of both. I feel like a lot of us, people who are well-rounded, are maybe perhaps role model good choices and overall make good choices. However, sometimes we're impacted by outside sources such as our peers, such as social media, environment. Sometimes it takes a really strong-minded person not to do what everybody else is doing, right? However, when you fold and you do what everybody else is doing, that can impact you because you can feel really, you can know that what you're doing is not right, but you still chose to make a choice that was maybe against your own value system, and then you do end up feeling insecure, I guess, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got anything you want to add to that?
Well, I like what she's saying so far. I mean, it flows with what I understand mental health to be. It does affect the way you think. It does, you know, emotions do play into it. Choices, all of those things play into it. Um, I don't like to believe that anybody's stuck in a position because I don't believe that people are stuck. Um, because because just, you know, my own experience and dealing with people who have mental health issues or behavioral issues, this that, and the other, environment does play a role. However, it doesn't always that just because one is raised in a negative environment doesn't guarantee that someone's going to come out negative. And just because someone's raised in a positive environment doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to come out positive. It all depends on the individual and how they receive and how they allow that environment to impact them, or even as you mentioned, peers. You know, you mentioned that it takes a strong-minded individual to be able to recognize or to be able to stand out and say, "Hey, I'm not going to follow the group. The group may decide to go this way, and I may decide I'm not going that way." You know, so you know, but what I do. There's a book that I read. It's by Donna Hicks. It's called Dignity. If you've ever heard of it, she talks a lot about self-value, the importance of having value within yourself, because oftentimes when people make poor decisions, oftentimes those decisions are guided by trying to find their value in someone else. So when you look for your value in someone else, then that means that that person or that group or that environment or that individual is in charge of your value. And when you give it away, they decide whether the sun rises or sets and your emotions follow suit. However, if your value is within yourself, that is a strong-minded individual who's able to wherever environment that they're in, they're able to effectively maneuver their way through it because their value is not external, but it is internal. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and you know, and there's a thing that I was looking into, a culture shock. Some people get into or shock for the culture that they're in. Like, you know, culture don't mean just race or something. It means what's going on in the home, or the environment that's going on within the household. So in that culture, there's a lot of molestation. There's a lot of degrading, belittling. Passive aggressiveness, attentiveness, um, uh, shortcomings of loving because they was brought up under that same thing, so they pass it down. So that plays a lot of roles in how people develop too. And when we're talking about developing people, we're talking about people who are sound-minded, to understand certain things. So then I get into that factor, because then it drops down to the chemical part. But then there's something that goes into the brain, how it registers things, and that's the chemical part of it. Now, do you understand that part of it?
Homeostasis is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The imbalance of chemicals in the brain.
Yeah.
I guess thinking about just like endorphins and dopamine, things that make us feel good and pleasant things that, yes, we are impacted. Those are the chemicals that impact our emotions. However, trauma has a way of changing the brain. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and basically the book talks about how trauma impacts your whole body, from your head all the way down to your toes. It talks about how your brain, like you may have used to think one way, but now because of this trauma, you think another. Trauma can also manifest physically with headaches. maybe pain in your body. So yes, I do feel like there is a chemical component of mental health and change due to trauma. Um, there's a belief that depression is a chemical imbalance in the brain. Whereas some people people that may not understand depression, first of all, there's really no, when it comes to mental health, in my opinion, there's really no way to clearly understand any of it, in my opinion, because it's so variable from person to person. Some of us also have a little bit more resiliency than others. So we might actually have dealt with some depression and we might even be depressed.
Mm-hmm.
However, we are able to manage or treat that depression in different ways versus someone who is depressed and they can't even get out of bed daily. So it's kind of how you channel that depression, if it's going to be worse or better in a sense.
So are you?
It's like love, right? So like when you fall in love with somebody and think something traumatized you to see that person have did you wrong, so it's hard to let go of that grip on some people. Some people can move on just like that. And some people it just seems like it just takes forever. They be trying to come up with these new love bomb and all these things that to try to characterize it or put a name or a face to it. You know what I mean? So I just be like, and that could be the chemical part. That's what I was asking.
And I guess my takeaway from some of the things that you just said was anxiety plays a big role in that one's level of anxiety or one's level of how they experience the trauma, what we call trauma, or what used to be the talking, probably still is the talk, when they talk about ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences. Those things that affected you, that followed you from childhood up into adulthood. There's and I brought it up before, but there's a book called "It Didn't Start with You." Talks about epigenetics. It talks about sometimes things happening on an unconscious level, occurring on an unconscious level because of family trauma, which may be something you didn't necessarily experience firsthand, but vicariously you experienced it through someone else because someone else experienced it, and on a genetic level it was passed down to you. So you don't necessarily know why you do what you do or why you view things the way you view things, but you view things that way. And unless you take a conscious effort to make adjustments, because when it talks about genetics, it's talking about genetic expression, the ability to turn things on and turn things off, and how certain things are turned on simply because of the experiences, the things that we've experienced in life, or the trauma that we've experienced in life, how they turn on certain things. However, it talks about how those things are not permanent. Just because something has been passed down to you genetically, certain aspects or emotions have been turned on and others have been turned off, such as sometimes a person may look at another and say, well, you're not as smart, or you're not as intelligent, or you're not good in math, or this, that, and the other, because something may be turned off in that person. But once that person is able to change or make a conscious effort to change, it's almost like a switch going from a fixed mindset, which will say it's impossible for me to change, to a growth mindset and says, well, given some time, I'll get there. Then one needs patience with themselves. They need to show compassion towards themselves to make it through whatever they need to make it through to get to a higher level, instead of allowing trauma to take its permanent place in the life of an individual, if that makes sense. Agree, disagree?
Yeah, I agree. And when you say that, it kind of made me kind of go back to the sniper that shot at President Trump. Now, anybody who knows that if you're going to do something in that environment, you know the repercussion is going to come behind that.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to prepare himself to know that was something was going to happen. The outcome was going to be. Now, did you think he was mentally all the way there to because either there's a deal on the table or either there was some mental problems there. And because if someone wants to lose their life for something, they didn't even hit the target like he should have. I'm just keeping in mind. You didn't hit the target like you should have.
Right.
If if my life is going to be gone, let me take the target out with me. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's a sound mind. You know what I mean? So something told me that something was wrong. I'm not saying that it is what it is because I don't know. It's just my opinion. My opinion is wrong. I just looked at that when you were speaking. It made me think about that scenario. What do y'all think?
Well, I mean, you talking about what the individual's mindset might have been, and as Miss Rose, okay, as Rose stated earlier, that depends on the person, and it's hard to zero in on what it was. So when you're talking about mental health, again, we're talking about experiences, we're talking about emotions, we're talking about endorphins, we're talking about chemicals. So it could be any of those things, but more often than not, my opinion, of course, is emotions. Most things and when you talk about depression, you're talking about anxiety, you're talking about anger, you're talking about people who get behind a cause. Oftentimes, or like you said, that's again, you're looking for value on the outside instead of having value on the inside. So you want to make a name for yourself. If you don't already have a name within yourself, and you're looking for somebody else to give you a name, then that means you're seeking their attention to give you a name.
And the reason why I bring that up because I want the audience to we have almost 15,000 people looking right now.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is that I just want them. We got a lot of young, old people looking.
Right.
And I just want them to understand the variables of mental health and the stableness and the unstableness of it, so we can try to get a grip on our society. Because in our society, when people talk about death, and put it in their songs and they talk about all these things, and a guy can go into a church and say a prayer and sit with 9 people, and just, and actually sit there the whole entire time and already got in his mind made up he's going to kill these people.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what they was doing spiritually or religiously, he had his mind made up.
Mm-hmm.
And he took their lives.
So,
and I always ask that question: where was the state of mind at?
well, I mean, but you again, you have to ask. Okay, when people make decisions, most often we make decisions, it's about how we think, what we experience, what we value, what we don't value, and a lot of it, to be honest with you, it seems like it's set in emotions. How I feel about a situation, it's going to determine how I respond. I mean, it's like I forgot the name of that book, but it talks about how it gives you. It's like you have a setting event, you have an event, which leads to a thought. Those thoughts is what leads to the emotions and the behaviors.
Yeah.
Okay, so how people think about things, how they've interpreted something, more often than not determines how they're going to proceed. And for everybody that is different, you will not interpret things the way I interpret things. Ms. Rose is not going to interpret things the way I interpret or the way you interpret things, because based on our life experiences, any given situation, we can experience the exact same scenario, and we're going to see it differently simply because of where we sit in our life.
Yeah.
And for every individual, it's like that. So then you have to an individual have to make a conscious effort to know not only your own triggers, not only to know where you are or why you or how you're viewing that thing, and if it's even rational to view it that way. Oftentimes, if we don't rope in our thoughts, they get away from us. And when they get away from us, it's like a person who says they go cold black or they black out. That's an individual who felt it coming, didn't rope it in, and allowed it to continue to the point where they got so angry that they didn't pay any attention to what their behaviors were that followed. They were just acting out.
And,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes great sense. Now, Rosa, what he was saying is actually 100% accurate. What something that's missing. Some things could be in there that can cause that decision, cause them not to open it. That could be drugs, could be alcohol, other types of chemicals that they're adding into the body.
Mm-hmm.
So now that plays a role into the decipher or how to decipher information.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, that when the time to decipher information, it gets lost in translation and interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, they only go for what they know best is to react. Can you explain that part of a person's being?
I mean, I think honestly, you all have explained it very well. I mean, every behavior starts with a thought, and just depending on our experiences, our circumstances, our emotions, we act or react. There's really nothing much more to it. I mean, a lot of times when we don't react or don't respond to different things, where we're either not impacted or we're using self-control.
Mm-hmm.
So, I feel like that's a pretty simple concept. Now, when we talk about being under the influences of substances, that's a totally different. Yeah, that's a totally different situation. Sometimes you're unable to control yourself because at some point you're not yourself. You're having an out of body and out of your mind experience.
But do you think that before people drink, they already have that mindset going into drinking? Because I know that sometimes people wants to do something and they just can't do it sober, so they do it while they intoxicated so they can blame the alcohol.
Are you talking about liquid courage?
Yeah,
that's the talk.
Yeah, or they need something to amp them up.
I mean, yeah, some people actually do experience anxiety, social anxiety. So they use substances to just be involved in whatever they want to be involved in. I mean, that's not being very mindful. You can't really be mindful if you're under the influence of substances. Some people might argue that point with me with the induction of psychedelic substances such as mushrooms and something else called ketamine. Sometimes people say that those things and even marijuana, sometimes those things are used to treat different mental health afflictions. However, I don't think that we're being very mindful when we're under the influence of substances, because at some point that substance just takes over our mind. So it's hard to be mindful. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've seen a lot of kids. They will complain about taking Ritalin because they said it takes them
down,
dikes them down, or they just feel like they can't operate like they should, like they normal selves.
Well, sometimes, my understanding is that medication and therapy go together. You should not have one without the other. Now, people do it, but therapy and medication, because
I'm going to correct you.
Okay.
I feel like you should not take medications without therapy, but you can do therapy without medications. Because sometimes the therapy is just
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. But what I was trying to get to is that the medications sometimes allow for therapy to take place because
That's true.
because their minds, whether it's ADHD, whatever it is, that sometimes people have a really hard time concentrating.
Absolutely.
So the medications allow them to be teachable.
Yes.
And so that's what I mean when I say they work hand in hand.
Yeah.
But in order for therapy to even work with an individual, just like, again, you talking about a drug addict or alcoholic or anybody else who has any other condition, if you don't have them on, if they're not on board, it doesn't matter how much therapy you give them.
Right.
If they're not ready to change, if they're not ready to make adjustments, they will not change.
That is true. And I guess I'm saying is like every person that I see for therapy, I'm not saying you need to be on some type of meds.
Right.
Because everybody that comes into therapy they don't necessarily deal with or are diagnosed with severe and persistent mental illness. Some people just want to process through some life changes.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just want a therapist literally to bounce some out ideas off of.
Yes.
Some people just want to just process some things with somebody who's non-biased and
Yes.
trustworthy.
Yes.
Versus a loved one who is going to put a lot of critiques and a lot of opinions, unwarranted opinions they didn't ask for.
Right.
On their, because like as a therapist, I'm non-biased and I'm also professionally non-judgmental. However, if a client is asking me to judge them or give my opinion, I will, because they're requesting that.
Right.
So.
Okay, I got some comments. Sippy King said, meaning every reaction shouldn't be a reaction or emotional. Self-control is power, and undisciplined is irresponsible. Everything is mental strength. If an individual isn't willing to defeat a habit, then they would never stop.
Yeah.
Very true.
From Mississippi.
True.
And that's true. And he's a young brother. He's been through a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Me and him just had a conversation the other day.
Mm-hmm.
3 hours on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so just him to engage in this conversation is awesome. I want to say thanks, brother.
That actually brings me to someone currently, a community friend. Lots of people know him in the community. He's a little bit a little bit younger than me. I am 40. Just turned 40 on Juneteenth, actually.
No,
Congratulations.
Tink you. And
Gemini's in the house.
Gemini's, yes.
We in the house.
So June 9th, okay.
Yes.
So I seen a post. I'm not going to use the young man's name, but it was basically the post said, "Stop giving so and so attention. All of that is doing. Give him help. He is clearly someone who struggles with alcohol use disorder or alcoholism. However, he has not changed the behavior as it pertains to his alcohol use.
Yeah.
The thing is about now, the young man has reached out to me as a friend and also knowing I'm a professional in the field. He has stopped drinking for short periods of time as he knows like he has an issue and he knows that he ought to. However, a lot of what people don't understand is in order for people to achieve long-term sobriety or make changes with their mental health or to manage their mental health where it's more beneficial for them or have a sounder mind, it takes skills to be able to do these things. It's much more than just willpower. It's much more than why don't you just stop?
Mm-hmm.
It's much more than giving ultimatums by your loved ones. It's much more than just punishing a person or taking away their family or their children, or like the person themselves have to learn a set of skills in order to first become sober and second to maintain their sobriety or their mental health. I think a lot of people just don't understand that because it's a lot of why don't he go get help, or it's a lot of why don't he just stop, and that's just not realistic. Once again, another phenomenon. I can't sit here and say that I know how alcohol use disorder manifests. I can't say that because it impacts everyone differently. I can have a couple of drinks and be like, I'm good. No, no, no. Don't want to drink for the whole week. But then some people have some drinks and that cuts on and you just go and go and go and go.
But see, that's where that's where the subconscious comes in, which is where the habits live. When something becomes a habit, and it's you unconsciously do things, unless you're consciously aware that you're unconsciously doing things. The unconscious will rule, meaning that you will do those things without thinking. Like you just mentioned, 2 drinks turn into 3 drinks, 3 drinks turn into 4 drinks, 4 drinks turn into 5 drinks. You don't even realize you're doing it because you're so used to doing it that you don't even think about it. It's like, and the example that I always use is like, and this can happen to any of us. We all had a potential to be addicted to. It may not be alcohol, it may not be drugs, but it may be something else. We all have things that we deal with.
Absolutely.
Every last one of us. So we do know what it's like to be addicted to things, because we all have things that we really like to do. And if we don't get to do that thing, we figure out ways to do it.
We become depressed.
Yeah. If we don't get to do it. Yeah, if you don't get to do it. Some people are workout fanatics. If they don't get to work out, boy, you see the ugly side. Some people like to shop. So like I said, those are all addictions. Okay. So when you think about everybody having addictions, then it's a matter of, okay, how do you address that? How do you address that addiction? Now, something you said that you touched on it slightly, and that is, it takes patience, and it takes time. It's not an overnight thing. So like you said, okay, a person like, well, why don't you just stop? Well, yeah, you can stop, but then like you said, you need skills. So, and like we touched on earlier, okay, once you've addressed the chemical imbalance, which is what alcohol and drugs and other things introduce into the equation, okay, once you've dealt with the imbalance, now how do you bring them back in balance? Okay, in other words, now you need some skills, or you need some you need some discipline, okay, which takes time. Like, you can't, if you're going to stop drinking, you can't keep hanging out with people who are alcoholics,
right?
Okay, because you're gonna do it. Okay, you can't keep going to the same places because you're gonna do it.
That's true. And one of the things I want to make sure you add in there is acknowledgement. A lot of people, just because they drink and they drink, a lot of them will say, I'm a social drinker. Mm-hmm. They have to acknowledge that drinking becomes a problem when I'm drinking.
Yes.
A lot of people don't acknowledge that part.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they lack awareness because at some point they are not even, once again, I know this sounds crazy probably, but they're having an out of body experience. The person who they truly are dissipates the more and more alcohol and or drugs they consume. I want to go back to what you said about functionality and alcohol use.
Oh, functional alcoholic.
Yeah. So once again, I always have to shout out one of my mentors because he's actually taught me a lot in the field of alcohol and drug use. It's Mr. Larry Duncan, and yes, that's a belief that people are functioning just because they go to work, they do okay at taking care of their household and their children. However, I can guarantee you that there's something in their life not functioning very well, or is that it's very dysfunctional. So that whole functioning alcoholic thing, that don't really even exist, because I can guarantee you that just because they go to work, they probably aren't maybe spending a whole lot of time at home with
Mhm.
being present with their children.
Right.
They're maybe not at home, making sure their home is clean,
Right.
or kept, or cooked, or they're not cooking for their family. I have worked with individuals that go to work every day as soon as they get off work. Matter of fact, I didn't work with individuals who, on their way to work, they're stopping
Mm-hmm.
and picking up their shots.
Mm-hmm.
I work with individuals who they work 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., but they're drinking from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. They're doing 8 hours of drinking over 20 beers
Mm-hmm.
in 8 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Early, wake up in the morning. They gotta have.
Well, and so then you ask. So then here's a question: why? Okay.
So going back to the insecurities, though,
Yes.
our main topic, where do our insecurities play into the way that we function or use? Just
I would say so.
yeah.
I would
or
say
use
so.
our chemicals or use these things that we're
You
addicted
designed to mask
Yeah,
an insecurity.
yeah.
I agree.
Which that insecurity might be our mental health,
Yep.
anxiety, depression.
Yep.
A lot of time we actually are treating mental health disorders with substances, just not like the recommended substances.
Right.
Insecurities, and then we think about process addictions, insecurities, exercising, which was Raymond's example. I said shopping because we just can't get enough of all of these things because these things make us feel more secure.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just accumulating stuff.
You know, one of the insecurities I see in descendants in the elderly home is gossiping.
Oh yes. I'll be right back.
You know, it's gossiping. And they would rather point the spotlight on someone else to take the spotlight off themselves.
Yes.
And you know, and they want to be the one to know all the information.
Absolutely.
You know, that's insecurity. I want to read my brother Mississippi. He said, "I stopped drinking every day myself personally, and I feel the difference. My mind is stronger than ever. It's a mind thing when it comes to alcohol. Laugh aloud. I drink socially now, if it's social, but it's rare. Drugs and alcohol deters an individual's potential, and some addictions come from family and mental damage. It takes prayer and discipline within yourself." Delete the comments. Very well, but that was his comments. Okay, here it is. He said, "Yeah, you have." He said, "Yeah, you have to change your surroundings." Yes. And U.S. you can forward it just you can put it right here. But to clarify some information, when we're talking about individuals, we are make sure you like it though. We are making sure that we giving our audience an understanding that family dynamics can play a big role in why people stay stuck sometimes as well.
Mm-hmm.
If love is not present at the door, if it's not present it's not coming through the door, it's not sitting in the house, on the couch with you. It is you are going to help people stay sick because people resent the judgments, they resent the constant beating them down. They resent that.
Yes.
And if they're not strong and strong will to overcome and say, you know what, I'm gonna prove them wrong by changing.
Right.
Some of them don't have that mental state to do that. So what they do, they fall more so than they try to uprise.
I get
and
that.
I'm not saying that everybody. It just takes certain individuals. I just look at my family. There's 5 of us in the household. We all was raised we came out the same womb. We all have different daddies though, but we all came out the same womb. But we was raised under this culture. was raised under this discipline. We was raised under these laws and policy, but we all think differently. When we grew up, we all don't even carry on the things we was taught, because a lot of them thought that was cruel. They didn't like the way it was structured. They wanted, whatever reason they had, I can't say, but I just know that they don't bear witness the same things that I see. I looked at it as, man, it made me a better person. Even though it was, my mom wasn't there with us all the time. She had to work. I had to learn to understand that, love don't always operate the way we think it should. Sometimes love operates in so different, in a different way. It's like, if my mom's going to work for us and make sure we have food on the table, we have a roof over here, that she might be displaying her love in that way. She probably wanted to give more, but maybe she didn't have enough to give because she had too much to do, trying to provide for 5 kids. So that's an understanding that a lot of us don't grasp onto. Some of us take that and make it pain. Oh, she wasn't there for us. I had to go through this. I had to go through that. I didn't have no. She didn't come to my football basketball practice and this and that, this and that. Everybody process differently. And that's what we have to understand when we're dealing with our people. And sometimes we prejudge our community. And the reason why our community can't come together because we're too busy prejudging everybody, assuming that they should be like you.
Right.
Am I right?
Yeah.
That's what I've learned.
It's I would say this, it's a fine balancing act. And what I mean by that is that some individuals will feel that judgment and are incapable are incapable of making the necessary adjustments when they need to make the necessary adjustments because of where they are in their experience in life.
Yeah.
So yeah, those traumas or that culture or those things that happen to them that they try to hide with the alcohol, with the use of drugs. Sometimes people try to numb their minds. People who drink before they have to go to work, depending on what their responsibilities are, whatever the case may be, or maybe it's the boss that they don't want to deal with, co-worker, whatever the case may be, or just having to go to work at all, and so they drink to numb themselves to what it is that they have to do. However, so when I say it's a fine balancing act, is that we have to be careful. And I'm about to use a word that's probably gonna be a trigger word, but we have to be careful making excuses for people. That because sometimes that's what it is. You enable them. You're not helping them. So sometimes things have to be addressed. And sometimes just because someone's addressing it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not loving you. They're loving you, like you said. Everybody shows love a different way. Okay, like you used the example with your mom. She showed love a different way. I gotta go work. I gotta put food on the table. Now I won't be able to make it to your game. I won't be able to do this. I won't be able to be, where you think that I should be because I have to be over here to do this. Well, it's the same thing as that when you see somebody hurting really bad, you don't just walk past them like you don't see them bleeding out.
Right.
You try to apply pressure so that you try to apply a tourniquet. Well, sometimes that tourniquet comes in a form of directness. And it doesn't mean that you don't love them in your directness. But sometimes it just simply means that they're not ready for that to be addressed.
And
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes good sense. And to add to what you were saying is that, they always say, they say there's a thing in psychology is about understanding the difference between hard gloves and soft gloves. Sometimes people go into a relationship with hard gloves, punching with hard gloves, you're knocking someone out. But if you go in with soft gloves, you're able to punch a little bit softer, and you're able to give it to them in a certain way. And a lot of times our approach is not with compassion; it's more with judgmental, as she said.
Yeah.
you know, and sometimes when it comes over them, it's an umbrella of nothing but judgment and belittling and tearing people down instead of taking the reign of watering, nurturing it, and helping it grow. We use sunlight where it's just baking them to death. You know what I mean? And we have to really be careful on how we deal with each individual, because each individual requires different techniques, different skill sets. Like
yes. And one thing about the human experience that's universal is pain. Kind of reminds me of a couple of rappers. One kind of not really old school, but one maybe, and more so my age group, is a rapper by the name of Zero. He's from Texas. He kind of makes depressing rap, and then the new school would be like Rod Wave. He makes painful rap, but there's a lane for that because everybody can relate to pain. Now, of course, they would say, I remember Zero doing a interview. They was like, well, how can you be in all this turmoil still, and you're live in $1 million house? And he's like, now, but here comes different type of pain now that I have this money. You know, because money don't necessarily solve or change anything. But the thing is that everybody can relate to pain. Everybody has been hurt at some point in their life. So it's really how that pain will manifest in your life. Will you be productive with that pain, or will you be counterproductive with that pain?
Or you're absent.
Or not address the pain at all.
Well, that's where suicide comes in. Where you're absent, or you decide to check out.
I personal experience, I lost my mother 10 years ago. She was actually young, in my opinion. She had a heart attack. My mother also struggled with some mental health issues, and what come with that was overindulging in eating, I would like to say. And my mother wasn't like no super big, heavy person or either. You wouldn't really know, but I knew my mother, and that's how she dealt with her emotions. But eating, which ultimately diabetes and heart disease, heart attack. But for me, with mom dying so young, I said, oh no, I have my children. And I said, I cannot leave them like that. I was 28 years old. So what I started doing was I went to the gym. Not to say I didn't have many days where I moped around, because I honestly, at that time, I was doing some drinking and stuff first about it. And then I ended up turning it around and said, okay, I'm going to try to be healthy because I lost my mom this way. So now, with the grief, it started counterproductive behaviors that did eventually turn into productive behaviors. But that is probably the pain story that I could say helped me. At some point, I did start to benefit from experiencing that pain. Because once again, that trauma and grief, that could change a person. So
You know, and you know, it's ironic that you said that, because me and my cousin were just talking about that on the last episode. You know, he knows what I went through growing up, and growing up was, you know, it's difficult because, you know, choices that my mom made that, you know, were men, and those men had power of attorney over the household. They didn't have
relationship.
They shouldn't have been in the position. You know, like you go to work and they put people in position that shouldn't be in position.
Right.
These men was in position that shouldn't have been in, because they were still boys themselves.
Right.
They're trying to operate in a man's position.
Right.
But didn't have men qualities. So therefore, that pain became that lack of experience manifested into the home, which caused a division, caused a strife in the home, which caused her children to feel a certain way. And so as we was going through this pain, my pain was channeled outside the house. So I would go outside and I would fight, and I would go, you know, get into stuff, just ready to get into anything just because I was just angry and I had to take it out on something or somebody. And my cousins always be like, man, we going to the club, man. I don't want to, we don't, even he's always giving me these precursor or pre-understanding before we go to the bar. Hey, man, I don't want to get in no fight, man. You just, I'm trying to have a good time. I said, so I'm like, all right, cousin, calm down, man. Quit telling me about this stuff. We're going to have a good time, man. Jeez. Get in the club. I'm with a bunch of guys that feel the same way I'm feeling. And the reason why I jumped on that side with them, because we all was talking about our issues. And we all had the same issue. So therefore, we all cling together. Mm-hmm. So therefore, in that we navigated towards each other, because like you said, pain brings people together. And in that pain, I was willing to go out and do some and hurt people, and and they didn't help me when it came down to it. But we talked about each other's pain. They just never, some people talk about it and they say they about it, but they really ain't. So I got into a lot of stuff. And then my cousin one day, he just said, he got to the point he just started leaving me. Oh man, you got to deal with that on your own, man. I ain't trying to be in a fight with 30 dudes and you over here. So to say the less of that is that I had to go through that experience. I had to go through that to find out whose I was, to know who I am. Because sometimes you don't know whose you are to know who you are. Right. And sometimes you have to go through certain things to find out whose you are as a person. Absolutely. And once you find out who you are, you don't know what light, what star, what sun is shining upon that person and what that person can bring to the table. So you have to be careful and delicate. That's what I said, soft love versus hard love. Absolutely. And also, when you don't know who you are, that is another thing that may feed into some of that insecurity. Mm-hmm. Once again, you talk about men being in your household who were masculine, but they weren't necessarily men. Yes. They were just masculine. Mm-hmm. Which, as men, y'all know more about that than me, where a person could be masculine, but not necessarily a man. Yes. So, and same, a person can be feminine, but not necessarily a woman. Mm-hmm. So. And this is not to negate, to talk down on the choice of my mom. These are just experiences. Yeah, I think it help somebody else. But Miss Sippy King said, he said, that's sad that our race belittles each other. That part of the problem when it comes to mental health. Hurt and disappointment brings anger and addiction. Mental health brings about health problems. He said, what's in the mind control the body? Mm-hmm. So thinking about like just the 2 words of mental health, just giving you all kind of just a correction. So the thing about mental health, we can have good mental health and we have poor mental health. Mm-hmm. So it's just really like which one do we have? Are we managing our mental health or are we mismanaging our mental health? Mm-hmm. Mismanaging your mental health would look like using substances that you're not benefiting from. Because don't get me wrong, medications are substances. However, those substances are supposed to be substances that we benefit from or manage, turn our behaviors around. We can start benefiting. Now, I'm not trying to speak to medications. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm a mental health therapist. So I work through processes and I teach skills where a psychiatrist prescribes medications and tells a patient how medications work. So there's lots of ways that we can manage or mismanage our mental health. Do we continue to be involved in relationships that don't serve us well, that don't make us feel good? Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about just romantic relationships, or a relationship with a toxic person or a frenemy. Mm-hmm. The relationships sometimes that we have with our jobs mm-hmm. can be very toxic mm-hmm. or just not good for our psyche. So yeah, there's lots of ways to mismanage our mental health, which contributes to poor mental health, and there's ways to manage our mental health that contributes to good mental health or positive mental health, and that would be having good relationships or maintaining good relationships. That would be using medications if necessary to
address different things going on in our heads. Diet is a big one. A lot of people don't realize that the things that we
Put in our
consume,
bodies.
definitely not just alcohol, the things like too much sugar can at some point really take a toll on our mental health. And just a little fun fact is that I can't get a percentage on it, but they say that sugar contributes to the manifestation of dementia, which dementia usually turns into Alzheimer's at some point. So yeah, there's lots of ways, and then thinking about the way that we just typically cope with things. Are we coping with things on a positive note, or are we coping with things on a negative note? So,
you know, and I want to add some other food that we should be paying attention to that a lot of us don't understand is that there's what you name the physical food, but I want to give the spiritual foods like hatred, bitterness, gluttony, gossiping, belittling. Those are all foods that we eat every day too, and they sit here, and you know, and you know, and the sad part is that you know it was already said that it ain't what goes in a man's mouth that defiles him, it's what comes out of his mouth, because it comes from the heart, and the heart is what has the condition. So we're talking about the condition of man, and which causes the diabetes and causes all the things, because people are bitter, they're constantly angry, they're constantly gossiping about people, they're constantly stealing, strife, murder, adultery, and you know, fornicating. All these things are things that we have we eat every day.
Yes.
We consume too much of, and nobody fasts enough on these things. But that was just something you just gave me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had to. I ain't gonna lie, I had to go to Google, but I actually grew up Catholic. So I actually knew when you started talking about it, but it's the 7 deadly sins.
Yes.
So I was thinking about gluttony and envy and hate. Definitely.
We see that in our community
constantly. But the worst hate that one can experience is the hate that they have for themselves.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because the hate that you have for yourself is a hate that you have for others.
Absolutely.
So when you're speaking about a cure, just like when we talk about in our community, change starts with us. Yeah. It doesn't start with someone else. It starts with yourself, because it starts with it's what you contribute. Because if everybody focused on what they were contributing, you'd have a functioning community. Yeah. But when you're looking for somebody else to bring about the change first, then you're looking outward instead of inward.
You talk about in psychology, you talk about looking glass cells.
Yes. Right. So, and again, you know, with everything that we're talking about here, it starts with us. Yeah. It starts with self. You know, when you talk about someone who wants healing or change, it starts with you. Like I said earlier, you can sit in a room with a trained therapist and still walk away with nothing. Not because that therapist is not good at what they do. It's because one has not reached a point in their life where they've decided that they're willing to do what's necessary or make the necessary sacrifices so that the therapy can work. Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
And you got to add with that, because you know, I'm glad you said that. There is a thing called supporting cast. You have to have sometimes a supporting cast helps people elevate.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Without that supporting cast, then what happens is you have different types of cast members. You got those who support, you got those who diminish.
Right. And see, and again, you know that goes along. You know, you are what you hang around. Okay, the company that you keep. So what does that mean? You have to decide who's going to be on your bus and who's going to be off your bus. Yeah. Okay, you can't allow everybody to be on your bus. Yeah. Okay, so you have to evaluate your circle. and determine whether or not, okay, just like you talked about, the use of drugs or alcohol, whatever the case may be, you have to determine whether it's helpful or detrimental.
Right.
Okay, is this something that's going to help me, or is this something that's going to hurt me?
Right.
If it's going to hurt me, I need to remove myself from that. Okay, and that includes individuals, like you said. It doesn't have to be sexual or it could be a friend, it could be a mom, it could be aunt, uncle, it can be a homie from way back when that you grew up with. It could be anybody.
Yeah.
But if you don't make the necessary choice for yourself,
yeah.
others will make it for you. And sometimes that is the root of the issue. The root of the issue is lack of self-love, if that makes sense.
And you said something. You said, be careful who you allow on the bus. I want to go a little further. Be careful who you let drive the bus.
Oh, you should be driving the bus. It's
your
your bus.
You know what I mean? Just because it's your bus, I don't mean you drive it.
What? No, but I know. But what I'm saying is, it doesn't mean that you're driving it, because you could be outsourcing your value to someone else. You're right. So somebody else could be driving your bus, but we should all be driving our own buses.
Well, the thing is that sometimes we are driving our bus, but we're not responsible to get to where we're going, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes somebody got to take over our will. Sometimes somebody got to intervene in our life.
So what they said, Jesus, take the wheel.
Yeah.
Well, I get that. What I mean, my whole point in making that statement is self-empowerment.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Because see, the thing is that when one goes to a therapist, their goal is not to lean on that therapist, okay, or to lean on whoever. I mean, you may lean on them for a time until you get the strength to stand on your own, just like children. Okay, when children learn how to walk, they first start off with you holding their hands or leaning on a table or something like that, but eventually they learn how to walk on their own, because that's the goal.
Absolutely.
The goal is to walk on your own.
Absolutely.
Not to depend on somebody else.
Yeah. But thinking about going back to the original topic, we talking about insecurities. So where the person is fighting through a lot of insecurities, they're going to have to process through those insecurities before they become empowered.
Exactly.
But I was going to say that when you think about just therapy in itself, I could say this is kind of a made up statistic in my head, but I'm going to say 85% of individuals are appointed therapy by someone, meaning that someone said, you need to go to therapy, or I'm going to give you a referral to a therapist. Rather it be a doctor saying you need therapy, rather it be a teacher at a school saying you need therapy, rather it be court ordered by a judge, rather it be DHHS saying that you need therapy because you're in trouble because of your kids or something. Many people are not just saying, oh, put me in therapy, because a lot of times people feel like going to therapy implies that something is wrong, when that's not necessarily always the truth.
Right.
Like I said, sometimes people just want a therapist because they want to be with somebody that can be trustworthy to talk with.
Or sounding board, like you said earlier.
Or in our community, it's cost efficient. So a lot of people don't go because of the cost.
Absolutely.
Because so that's why they have to make sure they check into their insurance, because the insurance will pay for that. You just have to pay the deductible, but a lot of times, they have to. That's a personal research that people have to do when they behind within themselves. And like you said, everybody don't even believe that they have a problem. Right? I've seen women who have been molested by uncles, fathers, and stuff, and they feel like, oh, well, I got over it, but they really haven't. Because you can kind of see it through the men that they do, and how they act and carry on with other men. So, yes, you suppress that issue. Same with men. There's more men. There's probably just as much men getting raped by men than women. And a lot of men ain't, because since we're men or boys, we don't. It's a golden rule. We don't tell that story because we don't want other men to think to talk about it. So
they get raped by who though?
They get raped by their uncles or cousins or dads. boyfriends, and these men ain't gonna come out for it and just automatically tell you these things because men don't want to talk about that. So what they do, they become promiscuous men. They try to either gather a lot of women or they end up doing something to another little boy in the same fashion. So we have these issues in our community, and a lot of these guys, they know that something's hurting them, and they hurt, but they don't want to go get the help.
But again, that's insecurity,
Yes.
and that goes back to that lack of self-value, because they're afraid of what someone else is going to think about them.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go get help because of what someone else might say, or what once they find out what they're going to say about me. So in that regard, I'll keep it a secret. But so I'll hurt in secret and not tell anybody.
And the thing about, they feel like they're portraying a macho man persona, when in really they're dealing with insecurities and trauma that have taken place in their life. So they, once again, like you said, they may become promiscuous or feel like they need to have a lot of women around them, or killers.
They go kill men that look like them, because if the men that hurt them, they're gonna go kill a man. It's easy for them to kill other men that look like the men that took advantage of them. So that's probably why you got a lot of the murders in the streets.
And also, I actually had the opportunity to sit with some of the LGBTQ individuals at a function, and there many in that room, that was their story of individuals doing things to them when they were youngsters, male and female.
Yes. And that's sad.
I mean, again, when it still goes right back to what we're talking about here, mental health. It's what I call it is you'll never be able to ever fully understand what's going on in the black box in someone else's mind. You'll never be able to fully process their emotions, fully process their thoughts about a situation or about situations. You only know what they tell you, or what they share with you. But even when they share it with you, you'll never know because you're not them.
Right.
You will never experience it the way they experience it. That goes for all of us.
Right.
So when you consider that, again, when that individual becomes empowered, when they can reach a level where they get the necessary tools that they need to deal with their situations, that is the most powerful position that there is, because they're the ones that are feeling it. They know exactly where they are, so they can deal with it better than you can help them get there.
Right.
But you will never be able to do it for them, because it's their emotions, it's their feelings, it's their experience. And until they start dealing with them on the way that they see things, the emotions won't change and the behaviors won't change because of the thoughts.
I know it's about time for us to.
Oh, it is. Oh, it sure is.
We want to ask we want to get everybody's final thoughts. So moving forward, pushing without moving the goalpost, we're trying to give our people some wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of how do we cope with each other. Because I do believe that in our community that we misdiagnose and misdiagnose each other. I think that we just constantly attack each other, not knowing not having the true understanding on how we're gonna help each other heal. What is your what can you encourage us to do as we move forward, trying to help the community heal as a whole, or as a collective, or as individuals?
I just like to encourage the community to stop putting their mouth on people that when they don't have all the facts to the story, and also to stop taking social media so serious. Now, don't get me wrong, there's going to be some good seriousness in some social media, like we're using social media now to talk about this. However, social media is opinion based, meaning that almost nothing is facts coming from individuals. So I think that when I talk about putting our mouth on people, meaning talking about people in a way where we're so judgmental and opinionated, and we don't really know all the facts of the situation. We're just being judgmental and biased, and also using our platform to preach hate or disdain, or like it's just a lot of what do you call that, propaganda all the time with just different things of black women are angry or they're unwanted or black men are lazy or whatever it is. Stop doing that stuff. Stop doing that to each other. Because if we continue to do that to each other, how do we get to a point where we actually feel good about all of us as a whole if we're doing that to each other on a continuous basis? So.
Well, I'll just go with, change starts with us, and being consciously present in that change. That's all I have today.
I'm going to add to what you just said. Change rolls in on the wheels of integrity. We have to be integral on how we deal with situations, or how we deal with ourselves, or how we understand the environment that one is in. All of us are different, and we're uniquely designed differently for reasons. Everybody doesn't accept or take things the same. They don't process information the same. With our knowledge and understanding on how we deal with one another, if we process the understanding on that this person might be a microscopic level lower than I at this point in time, that they're not there yet, and I'm able to be the vessel or be the light to shine enough to help them grow to the point where they're able to, because even a flower has to have some type of light for it to receive its that with the water, with the soil, but the light helps it, nurtures it enough to reach to. Just think about this. I always thought about this. It's just so fun. You take a seed and you just plant it in the dirt, and the dirt becomes so hard because it's dry, because the sun dried it out. So it's thick. It's hard to push your finger through it. And this soft little bud comes up out of that dirt, fights its way up to the dirt to get to the light. But it goes in there. It's in the darkness. It's in the tomb, and it dies first, and then it starts to grow and it grips the earth. Mm-hmm. Then it pushes up to reach to the sun. Mm-hmm. That's when you start to see all the things that you need, that nurtures the body, that helps the healing, that does all the things that we need. Why can't we be like that?
We'll talk about that next time. I think that's a great thought. I think we should talk about that, elaborate on that the next time.
Okay. Well, you write the post.
No, you're right.
Okay.
Can I say one more last thing? I just want to end with this. If you're experiencing a mental health crisis, please use 988. Also, I am Roshana Jackson, ROSHAWNA, Jackson, JACKSON. You can find me on Psychology Today, www.psychologytoday.com. I am currently practicing at Creative Counseling and Studio. Same thing, www.creativecounselingatstudio.com. Thank you. Thank y'all for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
And please go to people that look like you, talk like you, walk like you, because that's the best therapy sometimes too. And I'm not saying you can't go anywhere else, but sometimes you need people that can relate to your life struggles, and they're able to help you navigate through this wooded area. Okay, we as an hour is love, life, loyalty.
A rich man's world.